My sister locked me in a basement for 5 hours after I announced my pregnancy at her party. I fell down the stairs at 10 weeks. Now she's sending letters calling me a drug addict and unfit mother. But she never expected me to vanish with my baby and leave her completely alone. I'm 33 years old. I work in digital marketing. And after 3 years of trying to get pregnant with IVF, I finally did it. But what should have been the happiest moment of my life turned into an absolute nightmare because of my younger sister. And when I say nightmare, I'm not exaggerating. Like, it got to the point where we had to move to another state completely because we felt my baby and I weren't safe. I know it sounds extreme, but you'll understand why. I guess I should start from the beginning so everything makes sense. Brittany is 4 years younger than me. She's 29, and she's always been like the princess of the family. You know, the baby, the one who always got everything she wanted. I was the responsible older sister, the one who got good grades, the one who never caused problems. And she was the dramatic one, the one who, if she didn't have all the attention, would become unbearable. Our parents, Richard and Susan, basically let her do whatever she wanted because it was easier to give in than deal with her tantrums. I learned from a young age not to make waves, to keep the peace. And looking back, I think that was part of the problem. Because nobody ever set real boundaries with Brittany. Things between us were always complicated, but I never thought they'd get to where they got. When I met Christopher, like 6 years ago, it was the first time I really had something that was just mine. You know what I mean? He's amazing, super protective, supports me in everything, and from the beginning he saw how Brittany was, even though I still defended her. I remember that after she made a scene at our wedding, because supposedly her bridesmaid dress didn't fit right. Lie. She just wanted attention. Christopher told me, "Your sister has a serious problem." But I ignored it because, well, she was my sister and I thought that's just how she was. The thing is, Christopher and I started trying to have a baby like 2 years after we got married, and nothing. Month after month, test after test, all negative. It was devastating. Honestly, because I always wanted to be a mom. And every time I saw the negative result, I felt like my heart broke a little bit more. After a year and a half of trying, we decided to go for IVF, and that's when another completely different type of torture started. The injections, the hormones, the constant medical appointments, the money we spent, like it was over $40,000 total, and the emotional toll was brutal. We had 2 cycles that failed before the third one, and every time it didn't work, I would go into a horrible depression. Christopher was incredible throughout all of it. He never made me feel bad. He always said, "Let's try again." But I felt like my body was betraying me. During all this time, Brittany was in her own world, basically. She had a boyfriend, Jason, who was a super calm and patient guy. Too patient. I'd say later. She worked in I don't know what, in social media or something, where she basically spent the day taking pictures and making dramatic posts. She knew we were going through IVF, but she never showed much empathy. Like, she'd ask me once in a while how it was going, but always changed the subject to herself after 2 minutes. Once I remember, I told her the second cycle had failed and I was crying, and she literally said, "Oh, that sucks. Hey, but I have to tell you, Jason and I are thinking about getting a dog." And she started showing me puppy pictures on her phone. I should have seen it as the red flag it was, but in that moment I just thought, well, that's how she is. She doesn't know how to handle heavy emotional stuff. Then March of last year came, and the third IVF cycle worked. And when I saw the 2 lines on the pregnancy test, I literally stayed paralyzed for like 5 minutes, staring at the stick. I couldn't believe it. Christopher was working from home that day and heard me scream and came running thinking something bad had happened. And when I showed him the test, we both started crying there in the bathroom like idiots. It was beautiful. We went to the doctor like 2 days later and they confirmed, yes, I was pregnant. And the hormone levels looked good. They told us it was still too early to tell anyone, to wait until 12 weeks at least. But I was so happy I couldn't contain it. I told my parents like a week later, privately. I went to their house on a Sunday and told them. My mom, Susan, started crying with happiness. My dad, Richard, hugged me and said he was proud of me. It was a really nice moment. I asked them not to tell anyone yet, especially not Brittany, because I wanted to wait until I was further along in the pregnancy. They said yes, that it was my news, and I'd share it when I was ready. I was like 8 weeks at that point, still a month away from the famous safe 12 weeks. 2 weeks later, I was like 10 weeks. And what basically started this whole disaster happened. Brittany announced that Jason had proposed to her and that she was going to have an engagement party at her house. Obviously, we all went. It was a Saturday afternoon. There were like 30 people, decorations everywhere, elaborate dessert table, like she had gone all out with everything. Brittany was in her element, showing everyone the ring, planning the wedding out loud, saying it was going to be at a vineyard in the summer and she already had a venue and everything. I was genuinely happy for her. Honestly. And Christopher and I gave her a nice gift and congratulated her. The thing is, at one point I was in the kitchen with my mom and two other aunts, and one of them offered me champagne. I said no thanks. And my mom, without thinking, said it's that Amanda can't drink right now, and looked at me with that oops sorry face. I signaled to her that it was okay, but one of my aunts caught on right away and said, "Wait, are you pregnant?" And I sighed and said, "Yes, but please don't say anything. It's still very early." They promised not to say anything, and we stayed there, talking quietly in the kitchen, me telling them a bit about the IVF process and how hard it had been, and them being super sweet and excited. What we didn't know is that Brittany had come into the kitchen and heard us. I don't know how long she was standing there or how much she heard, but when we turned around, she was there with a face I'd never seen on her, like between shock and fury. We all went quiet, and she said, "Seriously, Amanda," at my engagement party. And I said, "Brittany, I wasn't announcing anything. We were just talking." But she started raising her voice, saying, "You always have to make it about you. You can't let me have one day without stealing the attention." I tried to calm her down. I told her nobody was stealing anything, that I wasn't even going to say anything publicly, but she was like possessed. She started saying I had planned everything, that I had waited for her party to drop the news and overshadow her, and I swear none of that was true. Like I was literally just trying to drink some juice in peace in her kitchen. My mom tried to intervene, but Brittany yelled at her that she was part of the problem, that she always defended me, and the scene was getting horrible. People from the living room started looking over to see what was happening. Then Brittany grabbed me by the arm, hard, and told me we need to talk privately now. Christopher saw and started approaching, but Brittany said, "Just us." And I, like an idiot, thought, "Okay, let's calm down and talk this out like adults." She led me toward the stairs that went down to the basement of her house, opened the door, and told me, "Go down." I said, "Why do we have to go to the basement? We can talk here." But she insisted, said she didn't want everyone to hear. So I went down, and she came down behind me. The basement of her house was mostly for storage. It had boxes, some of Jason's stuff, a washer and dryer. Nothing fancy. There was a light, but it was kind of dim. I turned around to talk to her and Brittany. We had her arms crossed, breathing hard, and I told her, "Look, I know you're upset, but I promise I wasn't trying to ruin your day." She didn't say anything, just stared at me with an expression that gave me chills. I asked if we could go upstairs and finish talking about this up there, and she said, "Stay here and think about what you did." And then, I swear, she left the basement and closed the door. I heard her lock it from the outside. I stood there like, what? Thinking it was a weird joke, and I went up the stairs and knocked on the door saying, "Brittany, open up, this isn't funny." Nothing. I knocked harder, started yelling, and I could hear the party music upstairs, but nobody heard me or nobody knew I was down there. I took out my phone and there was no signal in the basement. Obviously, because I was on the lowest level of the house. I started to really panic. Like my heart was beating super fast, and I was thinking, did she really lock me in here? I spent like 20 minutes knocking and yelling and nothing. I started looking for another way out, but there wasn't one. There was only a tiny window that faced the yard, but it was like 2 meters high and super small. I tried to move some boxes to reach it and see if I could yell through it or something, and that's when everything went to hell. I was standing on a box trying to reach the window when the box moved. I lost my balance, and I fell. I fell sideways onto the concrete floor, and the pain was instant, like a hard hit to my hip and side. I stayed there on the floor for a moment, unable to breathe well, scared to move, thinking about the baby, just thinking, please be okay, please be okay. After a while, I managed to get up. Everything hurt, but I could walk. I went up the stairs again, and this time I started kicking the door and screaming at the top of my lungs to open up, that I had hurt myself, that I needed to get out. Finally, after what felt like forever, I heard voices on the other side, and someone opened the proper door. It was Jason, with a totally confused face, and behind him was Christopher with an absolute panic face. He grabbed me and asked what happened, and I just said I fell. We need to go to the hospital now. Christopher literally carried me to the car. We didn't even say goodbye to anyone, and he drove super fast to the I was crying the whole way, with my hands on my belly, praying the baby was okay. When we arrived, they saw me quickly because I was pregnant and had had a fall. They did an ultrasound and blood tests and monitored the baby, and thank God everything came out okay. The doctor said the baby was fine, the heartbeat was normal, there was no bleeding or anything worrying, but that it had been a very risky situation and I had been very lucky. He told me I had to rest for a few days, and if I had any strange symptoms, to come back immediately. Christopher was furious. Like I had never seen him that angry. In the car back home, he asked me what exactly happened, and I told him everything, that Brittany had locked me in the basement on purpose. He wanted to go straight to confront her, but I asked him not to, that I just wanted to get home and rest. That night, my parents called us like 10 times. I finally answered and told them what happened. My mom was horrified, said they were going to talk to Brittany immediately. The next day, my parents went to Brittany's house and confronted her. According to what they told me later, she first denied everything, said I was exaggerating, that it had been an accident, that the door had closed by itself. When they said that was impossible because the door had a lock that could only be set from the outside, Brittany changed her story and said she just wanted to give me a few minutes to calm down, that she didn't think it would be so long, that she didn't know I had fallen. My parents didn't believe any of it, and told her that her behavior was unacceptable and dangerous. They told her they were going to cancel payment for the wedding venue and the honeymoon they had promised to cover, like $15,000 total, and that she needed urgent therapy. Brittany exploded, yelled at them that I was a liar, that they had always preferred perfect Princess Amanda, that she never had anything without me ruining it. Basically, she had a complete meltdown, according to my parents, like throwing things and crying hysterically. Jason was there and tried to calm her down, but she yelled at him too. My parents left and told me they weren't going to have contact with Brittany until she accepted that what she did was wrong and sought help. I thought that would be the end of it, that Brittany would eventually calm down and we could maybe work things out later. I was so wrong. What happened next was worse. Much worse. Like a week later, messages and calls started coming to my parents, to Christopher, even to some cousins, where Brittany was saying I had faked the medical emergency to get attention at her party, that I had never fallen, that it was all a lie to make her look bad. She said, I had planned to announce my pregnancy at her party from the beginning, and when it didn't go the way I wanted, I made up that she had locked me in. It was completely delusional, like nothing she was saying made sense, but she was saying it with so much conviction that some family members started wondering if maybe there was some truth to it. My parents and Christopher had to explain to everyone that no, there were medical reports, that I really had gone to the ER, but the fact that Brittany was lying so brazenly was terrifying. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon, I was at home working from the computer. E was on bed rest but could do light things, and I hear someone knock on the door. I go to open it and it's Brittany. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. Messy hair, no makeup, wrinkled clothes. I asked her what she wanted and she asked if she could come in. I don't know why I said yes. I guess part of me still had hope she was coming to apologize or something. We went into the living room and she started pacing back and forth, and I told her, Brittany, if you came to apologize, then go ahead. But if you came to fight, you better leave. She looked at me and said, I came to tell you the truth, that you're a horrible person who ruined my life. I told her, okay now, leave. And I went to open the door again. But she kept talking, saying that because of me, her parents had abandoned her, that Jason was distant, that everyone in the family treated her like the bad guy. I told her, Brittany, you locked me in a basement while pregnant. I almost killed my baby. This is your fault, not mine. Then she saw the little frame with the ultrasound photo we had on the living room table. She grabbed it and looked at it, and I told her, give it back, and she threw it on the floor. The glass broke and she stepped on the photo, literally stomped on it, and told me, I hope you lose that baby like I lost my wedding. I froze, unable to believe what I had just heard. She left and left me standing there in total shock. I called Christopher crying and he left work and got to the house in record time. I also called my parents and told them. My dad went directly to Brittany's house to confront her again. When he got there, Jason opened the door and he looked defeated, like tired of everything. He told my dad that Brittany had become obsessive, that she spent all day talking about me and how I had ruined her life, that she had stopped going to work, that she stayed in bed or stalked my social media all day. Jason said he didn't know what to do, that he had tried to convince her to go to therapy, but she refused. That conversation was in May, and like 2 weeks later, Jason broke up with Brittany. He told her she needed professional help and that he couldn't be in a relationship with someone who was so consumed by jealousy and resentment. Brittany obviously blamed me for that too. She moved back to my parents' house. They told her she could stay there, but with conditions, that she had to look for therapy and work. But according to what they told me, it was unbearable to live with her. She spent her time locked in her room or having random anger outbursts. One day at the end of May, I went to my parents' house because I needed to pick up some things I had stored there from when I was younger, like photo albums and sentimental things I wanted to have for when the baby was. Brittany supposedly wasn't there. My parents had told me she had gone out. I went up to what had been my room when I lived with them, and when I opened the door, I almost had a heart attack. Everything was destroyed. The walls had scratches and holes. My things were thrown around and broken. My clothes from when I was a teenager that were still there in the closet all cut up. My photo albums were torn to pieces with the photos ripped out. It was like a scene from a horror movie. I went down the stairs screaming, and my parents came running. When they saw the room, my mom started crying and my dad was pale. They called Brittany, and she answered super casually, and my dad asked her what she had done in Amanda's room. She said she had cleaned, that there was a lot of garbage there. He told her, "You destroyed everything," and she just laughed and said, "Oops." My parents told her she couldn't come back to the house, that they were going to put her things in a storage unit, but she wasn't welcome there until she sought real help. Brittany yelled at them that they were traitors and hung up. We didn't know where she stayed after that. We assumed with some friend or something. The next 2 months were relatively quiet, or so we thought. I continued with my pregnancy. Everything was going well medically. I got to 12 weeks, then to 20. We did the gender reveal. It was a boy. We decorated the baby's room. Like normal stuff. My parents came often to visit us and helped us with preparations. We didn't know anything about Brittany. She didn't respond to calls or messages from anyone in the family. She had stopped posting on social media too, which was weird for her, but we thought maybe she was finally seeking help or something. In August, when I was like 32 weeks pregnant, I started receiving text messages from numbers I didn't know. They were horrible things, veiled threats about the baby, messages saying I was going to be a terrible mother, that I didn't deserve to have a child. The first ones I thought were spam or something random, but they kept coming, and the tone was very specific, like the person knew details about my life. One said, "Baby's so fragile, hope you're careful." Another said, "You're going to see what it feels like to lose something important." Christopher and I went to the police and filed a report, but they told us that without knowing who sent them, they couldn't do much, to block the numbers and document everything. I was pretty sure it was Brittany, but I had no proof. I asked my parents if they had talked to her and they told me no, that the last time they tried to contact her, she had told them she hated them and had no family. I tried to trace the numbers, but they were from those temporary texting services that don't require real identification. I had my baby in September, a normal birth, a beautiful, healthy boy weighing 3.2 kilos. We named him Liam. Christopher and I were over the moon, like those first days in the hospital were magical, despite the exhaustion. My parents came to meet him and cried with happiness. My in-laws also came. They lived in another state but flew to be there. We posted pictures on social media, a mistake in retrospect, announcing his birth. Like 2 days after getting home from the hospital with Liam, my in-laws received an anonymous letter. It was long, like 3 pages, handwritten, describing in detail why I was a negligent and dangerous mother, saying I had had drug problems, total lie, that I had tried to abort the baby several times, another complete lie, that Christopher had been unfaithful to me and the baby might not be his, absolutely false. There were more things. All lies designed to make me look like a horrible person. The letter asked my in-laws to consider fighting for custody of the baby because I wasn't fit. My mother-in-law called me crying, saying she had received this letter and that obviously she didn't believe any of it but was very worried about us. She read me parts over the phone and I started shaking. It was the kind of thing that only someone who knew me could make up with enough details to sound credible. I told my mother-in-law I was almost certain it was my sister. I told her the whole story, and she was horrified. Christopher said, "That's it. It's over. We're leaving." I asked him where, and he said, "To my state. With my family, away from your psycho sister." I didn't want to leave my house, my job, although I was on maternity leave, my parents, but at the same time, I was terrified. If Brittany was capable of sending that letter, What else was she capable of? What if she tried something with Liam? We talked to my parents, and they, although sad that we were leaving, understood. My dad said they were going to try one last time to talk to Brittany and convince her to stop, and if not, they would consider legal action. They found out where she was living with a friend in an apartment like 40 minutes from us and went to see her without warning. The confrontation didn't go well. Brittany denied having sent messages or letters, said everyone was paranoid, that she had nothing to do with anything. But when my dad told her we were going to leave the state, Brittany supposedly smiled and said, "Good, leave, I don't need you." My mom told her she needed serious professional help, and Brittany yelled at them to get out and never come back. We started planning the move. Christopher talked to his work, and they approved transferring him to the office in his home state. South Dakota, like in the middle of nowhere, super quiet, which was perfect. I put in my resignation at my job, explaining the situation vaguely. We got a house to rent near Christopher's parents. Everything happened super fast. In like 3 weeks, we had everything ready. Right before we moved, we found out that Brittany had violated a restraining order that Jason had put against her after she showed up at his work several times harassing him. She was arrested, but got out on bail. My parents tried to use that to also get an order against her protecting us, but since she hadn't done anything physical toward us that could be proven, it didn't proceed. The legal system is frustrating like that. We moved in October, when Liam was like 5 weeks old. It was hard leaving my parents, but we knew it was the right thing. The new house is nice. Smaller than where we lived, but in a super family-friendly and safe neighborhood. Christopher's parents are 10 minutes away and help us so much with Liam. Christopher got a good group of friends at work, and I eventually got a remote job that lets me be with the baby. It's been almost 5 months since we moved, and honestly, it's been the best thing we could have done. We haven't heard anything from Brittany since we left. My parents say she knows we moved but doesn't know exactly where. We changed phone numbers too and put our social media on private. Apparently, she's still living in that apartment and supposedly got a job at a coffee shop, but my parents have minimal contact with her. Like, they send her a message now and then to see if she's alive, and she responds with monosyllables. My parents come visit us every 2 months or so. They stay a week. It's nice. We video call often, and they can see Liam grow. They feel guilty about everything. They keep apologizing for not having seen how bad Brittany was before, for having enabled her for so many years. I tell them it's not their fault, that nobody could have predicted she would get to that extreme. Sometimes I feel guilty for having run away instead of facing the situation. But Christopher reminds me, we didn't run away. We protected ourselves. And he's right. Liam is almost 7 months old now. He's huge and beautiful and happy. And that's what matters. I don't know what's going to happen with Brittany long term, if she'll eventually seek help or if she'll continue in her spiral. Part of me still misses her, the sister she was when we were girls, before all this happened. But the reality is that person doesn't exist anymore, or maybe never really existed. Christopher and I are good. Like, our relationship got stronger through all this in a weird way. He never hesitated to protect Liam and me, never made me feel like I was exaggerating or that I had to give Brittany another chance. And living near his parents has been incredible. They're super loving and normal. No drama. It's refreshing. Last week, Liam laughed for the first time. Like a genuine, adorable, baby laugh. And I was there alone with him in the living room when it happened. I started crying because I thought about everything we went through to get to that moment. The IVFs, the basement, the fall, the threats, the move, everything. And it was worth it. Every horrible second was worth it for him. I don't know if I'll ever be able to reconcile with Brittany or if she'll change, but for now, I'm at peace with our decision to distance ourselves. Sometimes protecting yourself and your family means letting go of people you love, even if they're blood family, and that's okay. It's okay to prioritize your safety and your happiness. It's not selfish, it's survival.